Okay, we're ready to continue to develop our newsletter template, and I've made a copy of the last one and named this one Demo 3. And what we want to do here is add some additional content that's arranged in 2 columns side by side. We saw this earlier when we took a look at this themed template that Marketing Cloud gives you as an example. Down here we see that there is content side by side, and they have a common background color. We also see that this is in a new content area. These are all separated in their own content areas, and we'll find out why that is in a moment. But the 2-column layout is this little guy right here. It's a layout block. All of these different layout blocks will give you these different arrangements of content. So we're going to use this one, the 2-column side-by-side layout. So we'll go back here and we'll go to layouts, and here it is right here. Now let's drag this in, and we see that we can target where we want to place it, and we'll put it right there. Okay, now notice that there is some padding space by default. It's built into this layout block. So there's a little extra space here. So these don't really line up with the content that we have, and we don't want that. So what we're going to do is click on this and go to Layout Settings, and we see here's that default padding space right here. So we're going to zero that, clear it, and now the space between the 2 columns is very tight, and ideally it should be the same as the space that we have on either side of our content, which we know is 24 pixels. So let's click on this again and go to Configure, and here is where you set how wide you want the columns to be. You can make one narrow and the other one wide if you want. We're going to use even 50-50 here, and the space between we're going to set to 24. Okay, that's more like it. Now when we go to our blocks and our saved content, I want to show you what happens here. Let's navigate over to our saved blocks, and I want to use the subhead text block, and we see that I can't really place it in the layout block. That's because I have the whole page activated right now. What you have to do is click on the layout block first to activate it, and then you'll see everything change over here. Watch what happens. So I click on this, a new panel slides over. It looks almost like the other one, but it's actually targeting just the layout block now. So we click on the little content link up here, do the same thing, navigate over to where we have our saved blocks, and I'm going to drag in the content block that I want, and we'll see that I can't drag it in up here or down here. I can only drag it in here now while I have this layout block activated. Okay, and there we have our layout. Now we saw that they had a common background color here, so let's click on the layout block again and see what happens when we apply a background color. Well, that's not really what we want, because the background color can't go all the way over on the sides because we've applied a padding space around the entire page. So this method isn't going to work for us. What we have to do is what they did in the example template and give this area its own content area. So let's go back here and let's just delete this whole thing. Okay, now we're back where we started. And what we're going to do is click on Code View, and the way that we add a new content area is like we did before earlier. Let's scoot down here. Here's the placeholder div for the footer. Okay. And here's the placeholder div for the main content. So what we're going to do is insert a new content area right here. So I go to code snippet. Content row is the one that we saved. Okay. And it pops into place. Now sometimes when you do this, everything will go kaflooey up here. It didn't this time, which is good. But if it does go kaflooey, as long as you know that you've set a unique data key name for this new content area, you're safe. You can save the template, close it, and reopen it again. But in this case, nothing happened, so we're okay to continue. And what I'm going to do right now is just change this to content lower. And close that. And right now it says drop blocks or content here, which is the default label that it has. If we click on properties, we're going to put content lower in there. So now when we mouse over this, it says content lower. Okay. And what we're going to do first, before we drag in our layout block, is we're going to reset this padding that we have around the whole page. And we did that in the design settings. And we click on body. And here's where we added 24 pixels all the way around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear this whole thing. And we see all the content now is pushed over, except for the photo. Well, the reason the photo isn't being pushed over is because we gave it a fixed width. We set the width here. So it's going to give a little bit of space on either side. If we scroll down here, we'll see that there's an image alignment control. And if you need to, you can use this. See, we can make it go left or right. In this case, we just want to keep it centered. So I'm going to leave it where it is. We'll click OK there. And now what we're going to do is we're going to set our padding space on each content area. So we're going to go up to the little control for each content area. Click on Settings. Uncheck the little lock icon. And 24 pixels on the left, 24 pixels on the right. And you'll see our content move into place. Do the same thing here to the main area. Click here. Uncheck the lock. 24. 24. Okay. Now our welcome message is centered correctly. I will go here. Over here, uncheck the lock. Oh, I'm in margin. I wanted to use padding. Okay, uncheck the lock on padding. 24, 24. Okay, and then we'll do the footer content area. And we see that we have padding on top of 20. We're going to leave that. Add 24 here, 24 here. And now our footer looks like that. Okay, so now when we add a background color, let's go back here to our new content area. Now when we add a background color, it goes across the entire area like that. And now when we apply our layout to that, we're going to drop in our two-column layout. And now we see that the background color extends on the sides now, which is what we wanted. But now we have to change the default padding space again, like we did before. So I'll remove that. And I'll go to configure. We're going to leave it at 50-50. We're going to make the gutter space 24. And now we're ready to apply our content blocks. And remember, we have to activate this first, and then we navigate over to our content. And here it is here. Okay, there's that. We'll do it again. Okay, now we just have a little bit of spacing to contend with. Let me show you one other thing first before I show you how to change the spacing here. I'm going to edit this. I'm going to put left here. And right here. So on our mobile view, what we want to have happen is we want these to stack so that the column widths can expand and not squeeze the type together and make awkward line breaks. And this is built into Marketing Cloud, the responsive tables. So if we click up here and we go to mobile, we'll see what happens. They stack. And the left, by default, is on top, and the right is on the bottom. Let's go back to desktop. Okay. And if we take a look at this for a moment, we see that here in the layout settings for the layout block, there is this mobile column stacking control here with little radio buttons. By default, it's on left to right. If we change this to right to left, we can see what happens. Now right is on the top and left is on the bottom. And the way it does this is it applies a direction attribute onto the table cells, which tables are capable of allowing. And when would you want to do this? It's possible that you might want to have a thumbnail photo on the right with text on the left, but then in the mobile view, you might want to have the photo on top and then the text on the bottom. So if that's your situation, then you can do that very easily with this control here. If not, you should just leave it at the default setting where the left is on top and right is on the bottom. Okay, so now the spacing between these, you'll notice, is even. And when we're in the desktop view, it's hugging the bottom. So the best way to handle this, I'll show you, is to go to each one of these content blocks. Okay, and what I'm going to do is add half of 24 to the bottom of that one. $12 to that one. Then for the whole thing, let's see. Here we go. Okay, here we are. 12 to that one. So I've added 12 to this block, 12 to this block, and 12 to the whole layout block. Okay, now when we look at it, we have an even amount of padding on the top and bottom. And when we go to the mobile view, you see that there's a little bit more space now because this has padding on the bottom of it. And there's a little bit of padding on the bottom of this one. So now we have our two stacking content blocks evenly spaced on mobile and on desktop. Now, one little side effect that's happening here, you may have noticed. Let's go back to mobile. We're getting this little space on either side in the mobile view, and that's because when we set this up previously, we had 24 pixels of space on either side of the whole page. And we added a style to the CSS in the head of the template to reduce that to 12 pixels on the mobile breakpoint. And so now that 12 pixels of space is getting in the way. What we want to do now is remove it. And we not only do we want to remove it, we also want to change the amount of space that we have here in the content areas, because right now that space is not changing. So we have quite a bit of extra space now, and on mobile you don't want to waste room on either side of your content when you're trying to read an email on a phone. So what we're going to do is go here to the code view, and let's look down, and we see content padding of 12, important. And this is in the media query for our phone users, which is max width 480. Now, let me show you a close-up view of what goes on inside the HTML for our responsive tables. Here, the table cell that holds our content has a class on it, responsive TD. It's set for a width of 50 with some padding on it, and this is what we set in the settings for that layout block. And both the left and the right down here have this same setup. And then in the media query for our phone breakpoint, Marketing Cloud adds a CSS style, responsive TD with 100%, display block, and no padding. So this is set by default in Marketing Cloud, and this is what allows the table cells to stack on the mobile display. So this is all good. In addition to that, right up here, there is another table cell. We see that there is padding on the left and right side of 24 pixels. This is the table cell that is set up for the content area or region that we're using in Marketing Cloud. And when we reach the final preview stage, Marketing Cloud will apply a class to this table cell of slot styling CA marker inner, so that what we can do is we can add a CSS style in our media query that targets this slot styling CA marker inner, and we can change the left and right padding style to half of 24, which is 12 left and 12 right. And so we can set that in our CSS. So if we go back and we look down here, here is the responsive TD that Marketing Cloud adds, and it sets a width of 100%, display block, important. So this is the style that Marketing Cloud adds by default. Okay, this is the style that we added here, content padding, 12 pixels. This is the one we want to remove. So we're going to comment that out. And then we want to add in its place this new style, slot styling, CA marker inner, padding left 12 pixels, padding right 12 pixels. So we're going to replace the one that we started with this new style. Okay, and then we'll click default here, and now we see that when we go back and forth to mobile, that extra 12 pixels of space that was here, that's gone now. We don't see the reduced space on the left and right because we're still looking at the template. We won't see the reduced space until we actually use a email message. But we can continue on a little bit and make some further adjustments here, and then we'll save this as a email message and see the result. So what I'd like to do next is continue this design idea of having colored rows and apply that to our footer row. Right now we have a little border at the top and our footer. So what I want to do is remove that border by clicking the remove, and let's see, there's still a none there. Okay, there we go. And now I want to add a background color, and I want to make it dark, and let's slide down. Okay, there's our dark, and let's see, we can change the sharing icons. Okay, that's good. We can make that white. We can make this text white. Okay, we need a little more padding space at the bottom. I can add that here. Go to our settings, add a little bit of padding on the bottom. And now we have a little extra padding on the bottom. And so now we have a pretty good looking template with a nice change here to the footer. And it looks pretty good so far on mobile. And now to see the final result, we're going to save that. We're going to close this template. And now we're going to create a new email message from our saved template. And here it is here, template demo 3. We'll select that, and we'll name this template demo 3 test. And click next. And we need to, let's close that. We need to add a subject line. I'll just use the same for the subject line. And select next. And now here we are in our preview stage. And here's our email. And now when we click the desktop, the mobile view, now we see what happens is that left and right margin space is reduced to just 12 pixels. So this is what phone users will see. And this is because of that those TD classes that Marketing Cloud adds to the responsive tables, slot styling, CA marker, inner. It only adds those when you get to the final preview stage here, but this is how it will look when you actually send an email message. Okay, so now we've made an interesting new arrangement here for our content. We've changed the look of the template, and we've optimized it for mobile. And that's it for this template.